All right, let's dive right into this explainer of a terrifying temporal anomaly that is honestly going to make you question the absolute safety of your own living room. We are looking at a fascinating and frankly chilling narrative known as the 314 recursion. It's one of those stories that takes the completely mundane comforts of your home and twists them into something you won't even recognize. We start grounded in a very specific, solitary moment in time. 3:14 a.m. It is the absolute dead of night. You know that hyper-specific time when the rest of the world is just totally shut down? Logic kind of starts to fade into sleep, and our guard is naturally fundamentally down? The silence of the house is heavy. It's almost suffocating. And the darkness outside feels absolute. The source sets up this classic cinematic psychological horror aesthetic right off the bat. It places our protagonist completely alone on a dark, rainy Thursday night. They're just sitting there in the living room, bathed in the soft, flickering light of the television, watching some old mystery movie. It's a perfectly normal, relatable setup, right? We have all been there, wrapped up in a blanket, just enjoying the isolation of a stormy night. But that profound normalcy, that deep sense of domestic comfort, is exactly what makes the impending shift so incredibly unsettling. Suddenly, the television screen flickers abruptly to blinding static, and the digital wall clock resets straight back to 3:14 a.m. Now, the protagonist initially chuckles and brushes it off as a simple power surge caused by the storm outside. Just a brief glitch in the power grid. But then, the first true anomaly strikes. 3 loud, rhythmically heavy thuds echo from the front door. It's a sound that is completely at odds with the quiet, natural rhythm of the rain hitting the roof. I want you to imagine the rising tension as that question just hangs in the cold air. I mean, who in the world is knocking at the door at this ungodly hour? The protagonist stands up and cautiously approaches the dark hallway to answer it, their footsteps super hesitant, expecting, well, who knows what you actually expect at 3:14 in the morning? A neighbor in distress? A mistake? They open the heavy wooden door, and there is absolutely nothing. It is just an empty, pitch-black street with rain pooling under the streetlights. Nobody is there. There are no footprints, no retreating shadows. And this empty street provides a brilliant, terrifying false sense of security. It makes the protagonist, and us as the audience, think maybe it was just a strange gust of wind, a falling branch, or some neighborhood kids pulling a prank, right before the trap truly springs. So, exhaling a massive sigh of relief, they close the door, lock it tight, and walk right back to the couch. But as they glance back at the wall clock, the visual jump scare hits. The clock is glaring 3:14 a.m. once again. The TV static starts buzzing anew, and immediately, 3 heavy knocks sound at the front door, the exact same rhythm. The loop has officially begun, and the trap is set. Confused and deeply terrified by this impossible repetition, the protagonist walks slowly back to the door. But this time, survival instinct finally kicks in. They do not open it. Instead, they lean in and look through the tiny glass peephole. And standing right there on the porch is a drenched doppelganger. They are looking right at themselves. It's an exact mirror image, completely soaked in the freezing rain, just staring blankly ahead into the lens. But it gets so much worse. The doppelganger isn't just standing there passively. It actually issues a silent, frantic warning. The drenched figure on the porch slowly raises a shaking finger, pointing directly into the dark hallway behind the protagonist. Just imagine that feeling of absolute dread washing over you. You are staring at yourself outside while that version of you tells you the real threat isn't on the porch. So what on earth is standing behind them? Before they can even process that terror, turn around, or let out a scream, the digital clock beeps again, 3:14 a.m., resetting the loop for a third time. The time itself is acting as a relentless rhythmic anchor, dragging us deeper and deeper into this claustrophobic nightmare. It proves pretty quickly that escape through the front door, or even just the normal passage of time, is entirely off the table. Notice the stark environmental shift in this third iteration. We contrast the relatively benign, comfortable environment of the first 2 loops with this sudden, aggressive sensory horror. The reality of the room is actively decaying around them. The wallpaper is violently peeling off the walls in long, damp strips. The TV static has grown from a mild electrical buzz to a deafening, abrasive roar, and the air is suddenly thick with the suffocating smell of rot and damp earth. The crucial point here is how each chronological repetition degrades their reality further. We move from the confusing empty street in Loop 1 to the intense psychological terror of the drenched doppelganger in Loop 2, and finally to the complete physical decay of the room in Loop 3. It is a structured, mathematical transformation from a quiet, normal street into an inescapable, rotting trap. Backing into the furthest corner of this rotting living room, the protagonist waits, but this time there is no knock. Without a single sound from the outside, the deadbolt unlatches itself, and the door simply, slowly creaks open on its own. And walking inside is that exact same version of the protagonist from the porch, but horrifyingly changed. The face is completely distorted. It's stretched vertically into this tall, unnatural fleshness grin that entirely defies human anatomy. The horror peaks right here. Your absolute base instinct is to turn and run, right? To escape this collapsing reality by literally any means necessary. But the protagonist realizes they are physically paralyzed. Their feet are frozen to the damp floorboards. Their mind is screaming to flee, but the body just flat out refuses to obey as this impossible, distorted creature casually walks into their home and leans in uncomfortably close. The creature leans down right to their ear, and in a voice that sounds less like human vocal cords and more like thousands of overlapping radio signals whispering all at once, it reveals its sinister motive. Every loop brings us closer to replacing you. And then, the digital clock on the wall sounds off. One final, stark beep of the clock. 3:14 a.m. The loop resets again, cementing the protagonist's eternal doom. They are trapped in this infinite recursion, forced to endure the decay and the terror over and over, slowly being replaced by whatever just came through that front door. To bring this terrifying concept directly back to your reality for a second, the source material leaves us with a highly practical takeaway. It frames the entire ordeal into these 3 distinct steps for survival. Step 1. Notice if your clock inexplicably resets. Step 2. Listen closely for the heavy, rhythmic knocks. And step 3, the absolute most important rule of them all, do not open the door. The anomaly actually requires your participation to breach the threshold. Which leaves us with this chilling final thought. We've unpacked the temporal loops, the environmental decay, and the horrific reality of that doppelganger. But consider this final warning closely as you head to bed tonight. If your clock resets to the exact same minute twice, and you hear 3 sharp thuds echoing through the dead of night, will you check the door?